All right, I wanted to welcome everyone to Rupp Fallsgraff's Empire State Entrepreneurs and New York Business Law podcast, a really fun and informative venue for us to feature clients, strategic partners, community leaders, and team members to talk about relevant issues for entrepreneurs and business owners throughout Western New York. As I hope you know by now, my name is David Fallsgraff, and I'm blessed to be the managing partner at Rupp Fallsgraff, a full-service law firm headquartered here in Buffalo, with offices throughout New York. And as always, I wanted to take just a quick minute to thank our friends at INSEP, Mike and Eric, for hosting us in this really neat podcast studio. My firm is using INSEP for a number of important marketing projects, and they're really doing a terrific job. And I think a demonstration of the partnership that we've developed is them allowing us to use this one-of-a-kind podcast studio right here in downtown Buffalo. So with that, I'm really excited today to welcome a good friend and inspiring guest, Frank Ewing, who's the current CEO at AML Rightsource, a Buffalo-based company that has experienced incredible growth and really become one of the world's largest and best financial crime managed services organizations anywhere around. So welcome, Frank. Thanks for being here with me today.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Before we talk about AML and sort of the neat, unique story, I thought it would be important for our listeners, Frank, to hear about your journey and what sort of led you to AML in the first place. And so remind me again where you grew up.
Yeah. Well, nobody grows up thinking they're going to be involved in anti-financial crime when they grow up. I thought I was going to play like center field for the Yankees. Then I realized I was 5'7", and that wasn't going to happen, right? So I grew up in Utica, New York. I went to undergrad at a small Jesuit school called Lemoyne College. Studied abroad my junior year in England. Played rugby. Had a blast. It was all pass-fail. So it was a real fun time. And then after graduation, I actually moved to Buffalo. I was with HSBC and it's kind of executive leadership program that they have. And my undergrad was all philosophy, political science. And so I wound up in banking and traveling to London and Chicago. And then ultimately with the bank, wound up here in Buffalo, working on a anti-financial crime, anti-money laundering project back post-Patriot Act around 2001, 2002. And so that's kind of how it all kicked off. Met some guys from Deloitte who were in Cleveland, and they were kind of external consultants for the bank at that point. And we used to go to Thursday in the Square, if you remember that one.
For sure.
And then we go to Bacchus, and they were kind of pumping me for client-side information. We became friends, and then ultimately the idea hit us is that banks like HSBC were going to be plagued by kind of anti-financial crime regulation for a long time. But what was the First National Bank of Hastings, Nebraska going to do? And so at that table at Bacchus, back in 2002, 2003, AML Rightsource was actually born. And so me and a few guys from Cleveland actually started the company kind of right then and there.
Was that and then was there a point in time where you launched the company and started working for it full time, or was there a period of time then? I know there's law school in your background somewhere along your journey.
Yeah. So we started the band. We were in Cleveland, had a couple records, but at that point, the market really wasn't fully bought in on kind of an outsourced managed service for financial crime or anti-financial crime. And we had a forensic accounting practice and a dispute advisory practice, and that was really the lifeblood. And so the band broke up for a little while, and I left, went to KPMG in New York, and then came back here around 2009-ish for law school. And then ultimately around 2012, my former partners decided maybe we should get the band back together and make some new music. So
that's a great story.
Yeah.
And we'll get to some little known facts about Frank Ewing, but one of them I'll share is that he actually interviewed with our law firm.
I did.
I think in 2010 or 2011. He was smart to, I'm sure, pass up the offer I gave him on the spot, and the rest is history from there. But I remember meeting Frank way back in the day, and our paths have crossed since, and it's been fun to get a chance to build a strong friendship with Frank along the way. So talk to us a little bit about law school and the impact of law school on the early stages of your career, whether you do it again, whether you'd never go back to law school or tell me a little bit about your mindset when you matriculated in law school and what impact it had on the early stage of your career.
Yeah, I mean, so I was, kind of a retread, right? I had worked in consulting, at AML Rightsource and with KPMG for about eight or 9 years before I went to law school. And so, for me, I traded in my Palm Pilot, at the time for some textbooks. And you're laughing because you know what a Palm Pilot is, right? You know what I mean? They were heavy. I can't believe we used to carry those in our pockets. How do we do it? It's like a workout, those things. So I decided to kind of put KPMG on hold. I had kind of a partner track there, and life was good, right? But there was something in me. I saw everybody around me, whether they're the regulators or senior executives at financial institutions, and certainly the partners I was working for at KPMG, all had their law degree. And it was something that even in undergrad, before I decided to go the bank route, I had taken the LSAT, and it's something that I always wanted to do, an itch I kind of wanted to scratch. So my thought was, what could go wrong? Let me make an investment in myself. I was a New York City resident at the time, so University of Buffalo obviously has a great law school, and I was an in-state resident, so financially it made some sense. And to me, law school is one of those interesting things where you flip over the back of the cereal box and actually understand what's in it and how things work. It was a fantastic education. It's informed me as a CEO, not just to issue spot, but to problem solve, to really think through issues, strategic thinking, and really, we have a couple of tools, right? We can write and we can speak. And what law school did for me was it really sharpened those tools for me. And what I found, whether it's business or law or any other discipline, is that if you can write and you can speak, you're going to be in a pretty good spot.
For sure. And it wasn't just the education you got out of law school as well. I think there's some impacts on your personal side of your life as well. Is that correct?
It is true, counselor. We met, actually, my wife, Leah, we met in a trial team class taught by Kathleen Riley, who later went on to be the officiant at our wedding. So that's another little fun fact.
That's
in
a
here.
great story.
Yeah, it's a great story. Now, not the great part of the story. My wife wanted nothing to do with me when we were in trial team. I believe she had a cousin who went there who referred to me as garish, and bombastic, and other terms that probably aren't suitable for this podcast. But like any good fungus, I grew on her, and over time, I think wore her down. I was funny. I would stay late and help other kids with their deposition, or their cross examinations, and I would normally not have done that, had she not been in my class. But I had heard the intel that she had on me, so I had to disprove her somehow. Ultimately, our paths crossed again about a year after she and I graduated, and the rest is history. As they say.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
So you graduate from UB Law, you stay in Buffalo, and you have an opportunity to sort of get the band back together at that point in time, or is there an interim period of time before you relaunch AML and when you graduate from law school?
Yeah, so in between that, I spent a little time with Hodgson, and they had just as good a pitch of yours, David. We had a good time working there, and then actually spent a little time in-house with M&T Bank as they were going through some of their challenges on the kind of anti-financial crime side, and help them with kind of my past experience in that space. And while that was going on, my former partners in Cleveland, we had kind of talked about the real market opportunity, and where we saw this industry going. And so left a couple really good opportunities here to rejoin the group. And at that point, it was obviously a much smaller and more volatile operation than it is now. But,
and remind me what year it was when you then went to AML full-time.
Let's call it 2012, 2013, somewhere in that range, yeah.
And does that move require you to drive down the 90 and spend more time in Cleveland than in Buffalo?
It did, yeah. We were, my wife at the time had her own divorce practice that she was running here in Buffalo, and we had a a two-family house in the Elmwood Village that we lived in some, rented in some, and this is before kids. We had this really cool loft apartment in Tremont, which is this little micro neighborhood right off of downtown Cleveland. We were really cool, David. I mean, like you could, it was like 20-foot ceilings. It was like an old creamery. It was great. And so I'd spent a lot of time kind of commuting back and forth, and then, as you know, the world changes on you a little bit when you have children, and so our infrastructure was here in Buffalo. I'm very fond of Buffalo, and thought, given kind of the market dynamics here as well as the kind of talent ecosystem, that Buffalo would really fit. And so we actually, at the time of the company, embarked on a market study, and there was other cities that are, I'd say, very similar to Buffalo on that list, but there were things that I knew to be kind of incalculable on a spreadsheet about the ethos of this place and the folks that are here that would make it a great home for AML Rightsource. So we opened an office here, I'd say 2018, 2019. Try not to quote me too hard on that. Down in Larkinville, and everything we thought about Buffalo in terms of its people and ability to recruit, everything that we thought was true was actually true. And as we started raising our family here, the nexus of the company kind of moved here a bit more, and I was a bit more full time, if not fully full time, here in Buffalo, and growing out a great executive team and really running a lot of the operations out of here in Buffalo.
So at its core, can you describe sort of what AML does, or why Buffalo, even though there aren't a ton of clients perhaps in this community for you, but why you felt for the type of business you were trying to build, why this community would be a good setting for it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess to distill it down, banks and non-bank financial institutions are, and when I say non-bank financial institutions, I mean anybody who's in the flow of commerce. So a PayPal or a Meta, anybody who takes in money, and certainly the crypto exchanges are one now as well. So banks and non-banks, the federal government, not just here in the U.S. but around the globe, has essentially deputized these institutions to be the front line in fighting financial crime. And really, more succinctly, to identify, monitor, and report potentially suspicious transactions to those governments, and to identify risky customers. And ultimately, if you take a step back, there's roughly about $4.5 to $5 trillion of illicit funds that go through the global financial system on an annualized basis. And to put that in perspective, that would be the world's fifth largest economy by GDP.
Incredible.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely wild, and that can take the form of tax evasion, human trafficking, drug trafficking, arms dealing, illegal arms dealing, terrorist financing, and a whole host of other kind of nefarious activities. And so, the core of our business is really combining people with technology to drive better outcomes for these banks and non-bank financial institutions to help them identify bad guys, essentially, and report it to the government.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. And unique, I assume. There aren't a ton of companies like yours, Frank?
What I'd tell you is what differentiates us is that, look, we compete against the Big Four. We compete against the Accentures and the Genpacts and the Alex Partners of the world. What makes us different, I think, is the depth of the domain experience that we have. So whereas those firms who are super high quality and good firms and good people, they specialize in this, they also specialize in 29 other things, right? We specialize in anti-financial crime. It's what we do. It's who we are to our core. And we've been able to demonstrate kind of both the cost and quality return on investment to our clients, and have a really good reputation with the regulators for finding this activity.
Tell me how the process works. You mentioned something about people, the sweet spot between people and IT or technology. Does one of those areas get leaned on more? Like, is the team more important than the tech, or is the tech sort of then leveraged by the team that you've built out?
Yeah, so technology is an enabler, right? It's not a disruptor, right? For us, it's an enabler, and so that is to say, we've got an army of, about 4,000 people across 10 countries that do this. And if you kind of in your head picture a trading floor, with an analyst with headphones on and 3 screens wrapped around them, kind of rooting around through stuff. Certainly, there's AI that helps in that process. There's a whole host of data and information services that help with that process. There's machine learning applications that allow our folks to go faster. But what we're paying for, and ultimately what our clients are paying for, are highly analytical and highly trained people who know how to identify these typologies and necessarily report them to the government. And so it's a largely people-driven business that is driven and enabled and enhanced through technology.
And tell me, scalability wise, the platform you built out allowed you to do work for financial institutions and non-financial institutions in the U.S. But as I was getting ready for today, I saw that you have offices literally all across the globe, and the impression was left on me that you took an idea that you knew would work, sort of regionally or nationally, but realized that it would also have applicability around the globe. And I'm really curious. There's so few businesses, Frank, that I've been in or around that has grown as quickly or sort of on a global basis like AML has done. So how did you have that vision, or how did you know that that was a possibility?
Yeah. Well, in fairness to one comment you made, we had no idea it was going to work. You know, we thought it would work. We're happy that it did, and we're still making it work every day. But we didn't know. I mean, I think like any good idea or good business, you look at the market segment, you look at the addressable market, you think about what your competitors are doing, and you think, how can we differentiate here? How can we be better? And on the human capital side, we've developed a real state of the art and groundbreaking human identification kind of program where I can take literally somebody with the right education and aptitudes, and we screen and test rigorously on that side, and within 6 weeks' time, I can have them outperform an internal financial institution employee or a competitor by 1 to 2 standard deviations when it comes to doing the actual work here. A lot went into kind of retooling and toiling that human capital identification and training model to allow us to scale it. And I will tell you, when we moved to APAC and when we moved to EMEA, it was kind of like fingers crossed and wait to see what happened, whether our human capital model would translate kind of across oceans. And it turns out, that it did. On the technology is obviously, scalability is related to how much you want to invest in terms of infrastructure. The business model itself, we went from working with small community banks, maybe $1 billion in assets, to some of the largest financial institutions and payments companies and crypto exchanges in the world. I don't know that there was we don't self-congratulate a lot, and maybe we should. I should probably talk about this in therapy. But, for us, it's like we've spent so much time enjoying being the insurgent that we woke up one day and we're kind of the incumbent. And that's a little bit of a different mindset for us. So we still play like the insurgent, and how can we drive better outcomes for our clients? You have to be just ravenous about client success. From your entry level analyst who starts with us on their first day, I still meet with them, and I'd say, if you don't care about clients, then you can't work here. And you say, what do you mean clients? I'm sitting behind these 3 screens every day, rooting around in all sorts of, information and numbers, trying to sort out whether, some guy's, evaded, kind of his tax obligations. Like, no, you have to care about the other person on the side of this who has actually hired us to help them with their job. And if you can't be relentless about that, then you can't work here. So I think, what's allowed us to really do this at scale is just that laser focused on client outcomes, on client success. And our people, we care about them, we train them, we treat them well, and it's paid dividends for the company. So I don't know that we were some super visionaries. I'm not Jeff Bezos, you know what I mean? But we've grinded and we've worked hard, and there's certainly a market niche here that we've been able to fill with some luck and hard work.
Tell me about you transition ultimately from Larkin into the M&T Tech Hub. What was that transition like, and what dividends has it paid for the company along the way?
Yeah, look, it's been awesome. It was an easy decision. There was certainly, with kind of the Buffalo Renaissance, right? You've seen a lot of different kind of properties and opportunities kind of open up. But for us, Well, I will tell you selfishly, one quick story is that I started my career on the 24th floor of that building right after undergrad. So there was this little bit of, hey, I can kind of come back to where it all started. But you saw the amount of effort and innovation and what that tower actually meant to this city. And look, there was articles that you could dig up where people were talking about tearing it down, right? And thank God we didn't. What I saw was, kind of our friends at M&T and some other places really taking 43 North, really saying doubling down on this being a technology hub, on Buffalo being a center of innovation. And I wanted to be part of that. And for us, it's not just symbolically, what it means for our company, but it's symbolically what it means for the region. To have that building specifically come back and to be the center of it all, I think speaks volumes to not just where our company wants to go, but where this region wants to go, and specifically where Buffalo wants to go. So it was almost a no-brainer when it came to kind of upgrading and selecting a larger facility for our company.
So I think it's just the symbolism of a tech company that's doing work on a worldwide basis to revisit their roots and come back to a place where you started, I think is awesome, and I think it's so representative of the momentum and energy that we have as a community right now. If we had more companies that had that opportunity or that vision, I think it would just accelerate some of the growth that we're seeing. And I'm curious, as you're working with some of the biggest institutions around the globe, what feedback do you get, Frank, when you tell people that your company is headquartered in Buffalo, or if you're lucky enough to host client meetings in Western New York? Are people at first, prefer to head to Manhattan or go to, Chicago or meet in London, or are they embracing the opportunity to come visit you here in your hometown?
Yeah. Well, you know this, right? I mean, the second you talk to somebody, first there's a comment about the snow, right? And as a city dweller, we get 1/20th of what happens in the South towns. But there's a joke about the snow, and then there's a joke about us not being able to beat the Chiefs, somewhere in there. But once you get past that, I think we've been able to bring people here, and they're just floored. They're floored by the quality of the people, about not just the people that actually execute the work, but the number of high-powered executives that we have sitting here in our backyard. The talent is just really, really second to none. You bring them to the tower, and you're kind of showing them the lake, and you're showing them these the development that's happening here. There's a ruggedness, there's an industriousness that's infectious when you bring people here. And what we've seen people say is, we like that this company that we're paying money to isn't trying to have a skyscraper in Manhattan. We like that you're building a community here. We like that you're not overpaying on rent or other expenses, and that you're kind of allocating your funds toward quality people. But then when people spend a bit more time here, and we've done I think a really good job of bringing folks to this community from those large global tier one financial institutions all the way down to kind of some of our crypto clients, they're just floored by again just the ethos of the people here in Buffalo. And it's just it's a special place. And you don't, having not grown up here, not I like to think of myself as an adopted son of Buffalo. You can tell it. You can really feel it, the passion that people have about this city, and how other people feel it when they come visit. So it's been a huge boon for us when we bring people here, and they get it. People get it pretty quickly.
What two-part question? What's next for your company? And then what do you see as being next in our community, and sort of the interplay of those two things? Do you feel there's an opportunity for AML, a responsibility for your company, Frank, to sort of help continue accelerate the great path that our community is on now? So what's next for you and the company, I suppose. But I'm equally as curious about how you feel that interplays with what's next for our community.
Yeah, I'd say, look, growth, right? I mean, we're focused on growth. We're focused on, how do we, some of these largest, clients that we've landed, how do we create more value from them? How do we go up kind of that value chain and provide them with more complementary and ancillary product and service offerings? And so, certainly we're always looking to innovate from a technology perspective internally, but we're also very aggressive from an M&A perspective. And so, we've added on 5 companies, over the last 3 years to AML Rightsource, 3 of which were heavy tech leaning kind of companies. And we're going to continue to go down both that organic and inorganic glide path to help us grow. And look, we can't sit here and have a conversation about a heavily services-based industry and business without having a conversation about AI. And so, again, we see AI as a huge enabler to our business to make our human beings, to kind of eliminate the scut work and to put the analytical work, at the forefront. And ultimately, let's not make any mistakes here. While we're out there and financial institutions are out there giving it their level best, trying to eradicate financial crime, the bad guys are using AI too. And so who's going to win the battle of the bots? Well, we think people. And so we think continuing to invest in technology to make sure that we're putting our people in a position to succeed, to be at the forefront of anti-financial crime is how we get there. So for us, we're going to continue to kind of pound the pavement, add more clients, add more locations, and gain more share. What I tell you, and I'm sure you relate to this, is at some point, being a CEO, it's fun and certainly it comes with perks and all those other things. But when you realize the actual economic impact that you can have on people and communities, the job changes. And you think about what can we do to ensure that my daughters graduate from high school here, go to college, and never want to leave? Now, do I want them to leave and go back and see the world and come back? Sure. But at the same time, I want them to come back, and I want them to feel like they're missing out on something if they don't come back. Well, how can I reverse engineer that? Well, I need to do everything I can to create more jobs, to create more opportunity, and really drive kind of success in Buffalo. There's 2 ways to kind of build cities, and I think we're a lot of cities that are similar to us from a Rust Belt perspective, if you want to use that term. They rely on the companies that have been there, and they should, right? Those are stalwarts of the community. But you got to build a city from the outside in, not just from the inside out. And so, how do we attract more businesses? How can AML Rightsource talk about its story from coming to Buffalo and its success that it's had here? And how can we convince other companies to come here as well? And so, getting involved with some folks around town trying to do that work is super important to me, and one thing I think we can do to kind of keep the good times rolling here in Western New York.
I couldn't agree with you more, Frank. I think that is a responsibility we all share to not only tell our company's story, but to do so in a way that makes a mark or is meaningful to other prospects, whether it's executives or employees or companies that we might be able to attract. So I really appreciate the effort that I know you make to tell your story in ways in which it could have a meaningful impact on external organizations that might be looking to move here. I guess at a more granular level, I consider you to be a really one of our city's better entrepreneurs and building a business from scratch and having the vision and strategy to take it not only on a regional and then national but global level. But for the listeners of our podcast here, the small business owner, the entrepreneur, any advice or any lessons learned along the way, Frank, that now as you reflect on the company you've built?
Yeah, it's a big question. Look, every company starts somewhere, and before we were 4,000 people, we were 4, and I think for us, it's you can't be afraid to take risks, and you can't be afraid to fail. And I know that sounds like a platitude, but it's really not. I've made bad hires. I've launched products that haven't been successful. All those type of things. But you have to be curious as to why, and you have to be relentless about your goal. And so, if you can kind of maintain focus on those couple of things, you'll grow. You'll grow by sheer effort. You'll grow. The other thing that I think didn't come early enough to me, but probably changed after I had kids, was you learn the importance of empathy. As a leader. And I think the most empathetic institutions are some of the highest and fastest growth institutions. When you're out there grinding it out as the CEO or the founder, it's hard not to think about where you started or where you came from, but you can't forget about the people who helped you get there, and the people who are sitting next to you, to your left and your right, or maybe now in a different part of the world, that are grinding it out and helping you get there on a day-to-day basis. And so you have to be empathetic in order to grow as a leader. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but it's at least part of it.
It's those traits, those common characteristics of entrepreneurs or individuals who are able to begin to lead organizations, whether they're a size of 4 or 4,000. I think those traits like empathy and second to none work ethics and having a vision that is sort of greater than where they started are common traits, and I think are ones that serve any entrepreneurial listener well as they begin to build out their business.
I remember when we had just eclipsed the 100 FTE mark, and I got everybody together in a conference room, and it feels like this was like 150 years ago, right? Because nobody's really in offices all the time, and so there's this but it's just different. And I remember getting them all together and congratulating everybody for, this, kind of landmark achievement, and we should all be so proud. And then I told them, guys, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never run a 100-person company before, but I'm in it. So I hope you're in it with me. And then we got to be 200 people. And I swear to you, we got a bigger conference room. And I said, guys, I've never run a 200-person company before, but I'm going to figure it out. And, but I'm in it. And I've stopped doing that mostly because people post stuff on social media that can be, damning to your clients. I have no idea what I'm doing. But the point of that is that, there's a humility in all of this. It's like none of us really know what we're doing. But if we're trying as hard as we can, if we want to get better, if we remain curious, then you will figure it out. And I think just going into any business or any idea with a super rigid, inflexible mindset is just how you fail. It's just how you fail. So you've got to be open to fail. And I think that's probably the best lesson that I've ever gotten.
That's great, Frank. And before I let you go, first, thank you for your time. So appreciate your willingness to come spend some time with me today. For our audience, any little known fact about Frank or any special trip you're planning on taking, or what's something on a personal level that our listeners would appreciate hearing about you?
I'm a big time Swiftie. Huge.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I don't care. And I don't care who knows. I hope a lot of people don't listen to this one, but maybe we'll see how far this one goes. Big time Swiftie. I live with 3 women, and so in COVID, look, she was putting out a lot of albums and they were speaking to me. And so, we actually went to go see a show in Pittsburgh, and my daughter had turned 7, and I don't know whether it was for her or for me and my wife, but we took her to Pittsburgh, and it was electric, right? I mean, 80,000 people, the ground shaking, to the point where I'm like, is Heinz Field, secure? Are we going to be okay? 10,000 people outside singing all the songs, bracelets flying around. It was the most positive energy and positive vibes that I think I've been around in a long, long time. And so I've got no problem admitting big time Swiftie.
That's my favorite answer yet to that question. So I think I can't end it on a better note. So we'll wrap it right there.
Cool.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks,
so
man.
much.
Thank you.
All right. I did not expect that.
Yeah. Well, it's true. You know what I mean? I don't want to hide it anymore.